I'd like to take a moment to thank all of the channel members. I appreciate you guys so much. If you'd like to become a channel member, the link is below. And to everyone in the live chat tonight or watching the replay, thank you so much for your support.
Each had multiple stab wounds. Some had defensive wounds, showing they fought with the attacker. And there was no sexual assault. County Coroner Kathy Mabbutt is describing the murders as personal.
Okay, guys. So, oh my gosh, can you hear me? I hope you can. I'm going to try something a little bit different today. That's why I was just trying to set up just to improve the quality of the live stream and all the things that we can bring to you without it buffering or fudging up or all those fun things that StreamYard likes to do to us creators and community at times, right? So we're going to see how this goes. So, look, there's me and there's me and there's me live. My background not set up so great. Oh, but maybe there's not truly me. Just give me 1 second, my friends, and I promise you I will get this all figured out. Can you see me? Can you see me waving to you? Let me know if you can. That's going to make a difference. So I have a camera up there. This is going to be super weird. I don't even know if I can pull this off mentally, but it's so great to see all of you guys. I'm so happy you're here. Let's see. Oh, great introduction. Thank you, Tina. Thanks for being here. Nope, you can't see me. Okay, so maybe I'm not even going to try to do this fancy stuff then. I'm going to try to do that another time. So I'm going to be ready for it next time. I'm going to remove that. All good. Okay, so as long as you can still hear me, we are good to go. Just trying to improve the quality of things for you. I know I have not been doing as many live streams and videos lately because I've had some other stuff going on too. Of course, just life stuff, nothing big or traumatic or anything, but I'm behind the scenes trying to improve things for you and also preparing to do some not totally different things, but different things with the channel. So yeah, now you can see my picture. Okay, can't see your picture. You have more problems with your podcast. This is like my side gig, so I just do my best. If you want to be here, I'm so happy to have you here. If the problems bother you, I totally get it. Sometimes I'm bothered by problems too. It's all good, right? So it's all good. But what you get is what you get, though. So you can hear me now and you can see me, and it's all good. Okay. So welcome everybody. It's great to see you. Moderators, you're the best. Members, love you. Subscribers, welcome. And if you're just checking out the channel, we would love for you to click like, subscribe, and we definitely want you to come back. So hope to see you. Glad you're here. Hope to see you again. Hi, Fluffy Muppet. Hi, Bashnik. How are you doing, Kevin? Hi, Soul Shine for Jesus Christ. How are you doing? Doing nightly chores and listening. I love doing that kind of thing. Soul Shine for Jesus Christ. Listening to a good podcast or a YouTube channel and just doing what you got to do. Nothing like it. Hi, Joan. Love you so much. Same to you, McJay. And Jody is cool. Brandy Wine True Crime. So happy you're here, my darling. It's always wonderful to see you. Hi, Angel B. How's it going? Edward, same to you. And I'm just going to say hello to the people that are kind of on the bottom here so we can get going. And if I missed you, I'm sorry. Just say hello and try to say hello back. Let's see. Awesome. Hi, DC Primetime. How are you? I try to be, it's life is hard, guys. I get it. People can be a little bit nasty, and sometimes, not saying that what that person just said was totally nasty, but being a channel creator, you definitely find that. And I know that you as human beings find that in everyday life. And I just try to remember that life is really freaking hard for all of us. And I really do believe that people, for the most part, are really doing their best, And hey, Ara, sweetheart, how are you doing? Yes, please do hit that like. I would very much appreciate it. Hi, Mitch. How are you, sweetheart? It's great to see you as well. And let's see, Patsy Baird, how are you doing? Great to see you also. Yeah, so you get that. You like to listen to something and get some stuff done too. Absolutely. So let's talk about the Idaho case a little bit. So, there have been some things going on, a number of different things. So I want to try to focus this evening on talking about the FBI's role in this entire investigation. So a few things we do know right off the bat. It was announced that there were initially, I think the initial reports, and we're talking in the first hours, definitely within the first days of the investigation starting, 25 and then 26 FBI agents, correct? So that is that's a lot of FBI resources. From Go, obviously, this was a high profile case. This was a horrific case. This was a case that had a community and a region and a nation and really people across the world terrified because it's one of these what if cases. Oh my God, I relate to those people. What if that was me? What if that was my best friend? What if that was my mother, brother, sister, child, whatever the case may be? The Idaho case definitely brought that element of humanism and fear to people across the globe. So the fact that there were such a high number of FBI personnel and resources on the scene from the start was not surprising to me. I don't think it was surprising to many people. In fact, in the very early days, we heard through former FBI analysts and people that worked with or in the FBI that their assessment of what they were able to see as far as what was going on right at the crime scene at 1122 King Road, and from what they knew and they heard as well, was that the FBI had the full-blown capacity of their mobile crime lab up and running right outside that house. So what that does is it saves a lot of time, it saves a lot of guessing work, and ultimately, right, you're trying to save a lot of hours, a lot of manpower, you're trying to cut that gap between the lead that the assailant had on law enforcement and actually identifying who that is, apprehending that person in custody, and beginning the process of serving justice for the victims and peace for the families, which is what one of our primary goals and pillars of beliefs is here on this channel. So, none of that was too much of a surprise, although, there were people who were in the know in law enforcement, former FBI, or in those higher ranks of law enforcement who said, wow, hot damn, like that is a lot of manpower. That is a tremendous amount of resources. What is going on here? I remember in the early days, there was speculation. People were saying, and I remember thinking this had to be the case a while myself. I remember talking about it on this channel. Oh my God, are we dealing with a serial killer here? Because the indicators in my mind that was making me think that was a real possibility was the amount of manpower, of resources, directed immediately towards this case. So we come full circle almost 1 year later on November 13th, 2023. And a few days from now, it's going to be 1 year since this horrific tragedy happened. Can you believe it? And, the FBI is still and has been throughout at the forefront of this investigation, well, of course, and also, making news and headlines as it pertains to this investigation, which is now, a trial. And, oh gosh, Honey Bun, I didn't see your answer. Would you like to come up soon and talk about that experience, or towards the end, sweetheart? One of our value channel members, subscribers, long time, she's been with us for a while, as part of the true crime community, had a forest fire very close to her house in threatening distance of her house, and actually had to get in with the fire responders, with the firefighters, and help them fight that fire to save herself, her property, her animals, and her neighbors. So, I mean, I'm sure that was a really harrowing experience. I know if anybody wants to come up and say thank you at the very least, to those firefighters, and just tell us a little about that. I'll bring you up right now, honey. So we're gonna bring her up and just let her say her piece. I think that this is important. So come on up, honey bun. I just can't even imagine. There's where I live in upstate New York, there's some, forest fires occasionally, nothing in the way of what we've seen in California for sure. I think out in Australia, right? Some other parts of the world where these forest fires are just absolutely devastating, and they pose a constant, seasonal, or sometimes not even seasonal, it's almost like year-round threat. It's pretty wild. Let's see. Yeah, Brandy Wine says, so glad you're okay, honey bun. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we certainly all feel that way. Oh, Joan says, honey bun, you're a hero. Absolutely, she is. Oh, did I actually send you the link, or did I put the link in chat? So here's the link. If you come up now, we'll catch you now. If not, we'll hear from you in a little bit for sure. So whatever you want to do is great, sweetheart. Yeah, I don't know if I can put the link in. Edward says, oh, that's right. Eastern Canada was smoking out New York State for 2 months this past summer. Sorry about that. That was freaking nuts. I don't know if some of you had seen, I had posted some pictures in a community post of a location that was just, 20 minutes from me, where somebody took, a picture of this beautiful scenery. I do believe it was from like their back porch, on a day when everything was all clear. And then the day when it first settled, and over a period of 4 days. And it looked like my grandmother was a heavy smoker. And I kept thinking of how, when she moved into a new little house, and every time I'd go back, her walls were a darker color, that like nicotine tar stain. That's just what it reminded me of. It was really wild. So anyway, here's Honey Bun. Hey, Honey Bun, how are you, sweetheart?
Hey, I'm great. How are you?
Good, and thank God that you're okay. So tell us about what
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't tell y'all this. My grandmother was actually the one that started it with a firework.
Oh goodness. Oh boy. Oh,
She lit.
grandma.
I know, but I kind of took the blame for it. I never said her. I just didn't. I didn't
Yeah.
want. She was already
Probably
embarrassed.
horrified. Yeah. Yeah.
So she got burnt a little bit on her arm, but it was not like a direct
Aw.
burn. It was just from being close to it.
Mhm.
But she is okay. She put some aloe vera on it and she was all right. But
Good.
so it's really dry here in the South. I'm in Alabama, and they
Okay.
have a no burn right now. But never did we suspect that one single firecracker would
Right.
do anything. And she was wanting to make
But
a
there's a
video for my
lesson for all of
brother.
us. When they put those no burn warnings out in a community, they mean it.
They do. They mean don't even
Yeah.
strike a
But
lighter. If you smoke, don't throw them out the window. It's that bad.
absolutely.
So uh, we have volunteer firefighters because I'm a small town, and we don't have a whole lot, and there's not hardly
Mhm.
any help, hardly any volunteers. So what had happened was one of the fire trucks showed up, and it happened to be my town, and
Mhm.
it was just one person. And those fire hoses are so heavy, and he was
Mhm.
struggling, and one
Oh
person
God.
can't do it. So I had a bucket of water and I just dropped it. I said, "You want me to pull that hose for you?" And he
Oh
said,
my
"If you want
gosh.
to," he said, "please, that would be great." So I just dropped everything and I ran over there and I started pulling hose, and the other fire truck came, I pulled their hose, and we had about
Mhm.
7 fire trucks here, and it was about 20 feet on one side of the house and 30 feet on the other from being
Oh my gosh. Oh
on
my
your home.
goodness.
Yeah,
Well,
but
God, thank God that you're okay, that your grandma's okay, that your animals are okay, and that everyone's okay. And
yes,
and that was really brave to do. And we have to
I
thank our first
couldn't.
responders all the time. I mean, they're
Right.
always
Well, my
putting
buckets
themselves in
of
harm's
water
way.
were useless. I mean, so I was like, I don't even think. Oh, and we have a business too here, so it was also threatening that, and it was just
Oh,
insane. So the only thing I could think of was just help them because they've got everything that's going to put this fire out. So they had to call in
absolutely.
bulldozers, and I just if there's anybody in here now that's firefighters or have family that's firefighters, man, that's a rough job. It's a very rough job, and I just wanted to shout out to them and just thank them from the bottom of my heart for getting here on time and getting it out and helping everybody. And it was just insane,
Absolutely.
but I did have a
Absolutely.
point where I couldn't do anything else. Um, I'd helped all I could without a suit on, and I went in there. I had a case of bottled water. I threw it on the back of the four-wheeler, and I just started going. As soon as
Mhm.
they would come out of the woods, I was handing them water, and which was the
Wow.
best thing I could do for them. For doing for us like they did. My animals were also amazing because
Oh.
they individually was one on one with all of these firefighters. Just they were loving on them, and they
Oh,
were
that's so
they were
sweet.
good to have, like for emotional support, I guess. But
Absolutely.
everybody was wonderful, and that's it. That was another thing I wanted to say. It says no burn here in the South. Let's just not do that. Let's not burn
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah, I remember I had to
So
cancel a camping trip with my son and his friend. I was going to take him camping, but they, one of the whole big draws was that we were going to be doing, the campfires and stuff, and they had no burn policy. I was like, sorry, we're just not going. Like we're,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
yeah, but
what's a camp time without a campfire?
exactly. Well, I'm so glad that you're okay, sweetheart. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you to all of the first responders and brave people who are fighting fires and fighting crime all over the world. We are so super grateful for you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on,
So,
Kelly. I'm gonna jump
yeah,
off
no, I'm
here and
glad
get
you
in
came
the
up,
chat.
honey. Okay,
All right.
sweetheart. All right, take care. All right.
You too. Bye-bye.
Oh God, we're so glad Honey Bun's okay. She's special, and thank God. So let's see. Richard Mullen says, with massive fakery in BK case, there was comparison test between the sheath DNA profile and BK's DNA from the cheek swab. And I think you tried to tell us a little bit more about that. Let's see what you had to say, Mr. Richard Mullins, who continues in saying, the test with ASW doctored all of the markers in the sheath DNA did not match BK. And what he's trying to say is that it was someone else. They were removed from the sheath DNA profile. So, if you do have more information on that, I would love for you to send to me. Please email me at whatsobsession@gmail.com. I have heard claims like that. And, I'm happy to hear your opinion. You're welcome to have your opinion here. We welcome a range of opinions, and everybody, please be respectful in chat. But I do have to say, to this time, I have not found anything in my research that substantiates that. Not to say I know everything, because I do not, but I wanted to give you a chance to say your piece there. So it has been said. All right, here we go. So let's take a look. I was going to do more of a deep dive until this evening when I got home, and I saw the abundance of discussion that is happening right now about the FBI's role in this investigation right now, which I knew was happening, but it seems like it's picked up a little bit. And as I tuned into it, I learned some additional things. So we're going to go to that for right now. So without further ado, because I've been doing enough. Oops, I'm going to bring that back in. And again, thank you so much, Honey Bun, for coming up. I really appreciate it. Here we go.
Tonight, FBI investigators wrap up the first of 2 days they're spending at the Moscow home where 4 University of Idaho students were killed nearly a year ago. They're on site today and tomorrow to collect visual and audio data that'll help construct a model of the home. Chief journalist.
This report was one of the most recent and most local I could find. Crime 2 was the first news channel that was on the scene at 1122 King Road when this tragedy occurred. They're one of the only news organizations that I can actually find footage from the date of November 13th, 2022, and they're still, of course, going at it. So this is very, very recent.
Amanda Rowley joining us now live from Moscow tonight, where the FBI has just left for the evening.
Well, since the trial for the Moscow murder suspect has been delayed indefinitely, the FBI is taking advantage of this extended time to gather measurements of their own of the home to construct a model. Now, throughout the day, we saw crews gathering images coming in and out of the home and even bringing out what's left over as far as personal belongings and moving them outside.
The home where Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves were killed 1 year ago still stands. Today, the plywood securing the windows and door of the house has been removed, and a specialized team with the FBI are on site collecting measurements and images. They launched a drone over the house this morning and appeared to be collecting images using 3D scanning technology. This will all be used to construct a model of the home. We won't learn much more about what the FBI is doing because it's still an ongoing investigation. So I asked Idaho's former state attorney general and county prosecutor, David Leroy, what he makes of this collection of evidence.
In this instance, it appears that the prosecutor is going to put some significant emphasis by virtue of a model and videos in terms of helping the jury understand how an alleged perpetrator might have moved through the house to get in, to go to whatever is alleged to be the first crime scene, to pass then to the second crime scene.
We noticed investigators are using FARO 3D laser scanners. The company's website says this technology can be used by law enforcement and prosecutors to reconstruct a crime scene and present it in the courtroom.
This is the diagram of today's courtroom. Everything you see here is measurable.
A demonstration video from FARO's website shows a few different ways to present the images, including a flyover view or virtual view of the scene.
But most importantly, you can create a specific viewpoint. What did that first responder see? What did that witness see? Or what could the witness maybe not see from that perspective?
It's not clear what version will be used in this case, But Faro's demonstration does give some insight into the possibilities.
In the meantime, the house will be re-secured once the FBI is done here as early as tomorrow. Now, the university says it still intends to demolish the home, but it does not plan to do that this semester. Reporting in Moscow, Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
Okay, and we're going to pick up a little more on that. I just wanted to give you a sort of, I find KREM 2 News to be a rather like kind of like an NPR or an AP News locally there in Idaho. I feel like they are pretty, I feel like they're pretty shoot straight from the hip, right? Angel D asked a question. Interesting you ask. I actually intended on talking about this a while ago, but then I stopped talking about anything having to do with the that family specifically or anything that I had learned from the two fraternity brothers that I've been in touch with forever, as most of you know, because they started getting some weird sometimes things just get heavy with that. I'm going to be honest. There are definitely people that do not like that not myself personally, but a channel, anyone that has a platform, in this case, strangely enough, and it always feels weird to me, it happens to be my channel, that has a connection that is maybe that is inside the case. There's like no two ways about it. That's just how it is. That is willing to share information and hopefully tastefully and discerningly disseminate that information as through conferencing with themselves, myself, and usually legal counsel, we see fit. That is our right. According to our legal counsel, it is not underneath the restraints of the gag order. So anybody who's starting to type, getting your fingers all tingly and hot, getting ready to threaten me with that, don't worry. We are thoroughly covered on that, to that end. So I stopped talking about it, but I am going to answer this question because I do think it's important. And I think it's a piece of information that a lot of people would like to know to have a better understanding of what happened, and what was seen by the eyes of the perpetrator that evening. And I do think that this is something that this channel has unique insight into just by the not totally random, but the not usual virtue of myself and my friend Alex, who is an attorney, having that relationship with the two guys who are on the inside there. So Angel D says, Kelly, do you know if the red Jeep was driven over to 1122 that morning by Hunter Chapin? So that's HC. So the perp wouldn't have seen the red Jeep outside at 4 a.m. Okay. So the two guys that I have primarily been talking to, and, you know, in talking to them, I've talked to a few other people, not nearly as much or intensely as them, but the consensus among them is that the red Jeep was not there when the perpetrator was scoping out the house and then arrived. And the reason is this: that vehicle was shared between 3 siblings who were all attending school on that campus, as y'all know. Okay. 2 of them were in the same fraternity. The sister was not too far away. You know, she was in a sorority. All of them, you know, hung out in a similar area, definitely on Greek Row and in that area. Anything that you know about that beautiful, beautiful, amazing family, the Chapin family, if you know anything about them, you probably know that they're very close, that the siblings were very close. They did a lot together since they were born, since before they were born, and they all went to the University of Idaho together in the same fashion that they had always lived their lives and maintained their bond between them. They kind of hung in the same circles. They weren't those kind of siblings that were like, you know, if I see you out and you see me out, we're going to pretend we don't know each other. That's embarrassing. They, from everything I've learned and from everything I imagine most of you have learned, they really embraced the bond that they had, that very special and unique bond. I don't even have a brother or sister. I'm an only child. I can't imagine having a twin or a triplet. And it was a sacred bond to them, and they cherished it and they valued it, and it was part of their lives, and it was a blessed part of their lives. With all that being said, that was a vehicle that they would use between them. And with 1122 King Road being in, you know, obviously Xana's residence. Ethan spent a lot of time there. People have asked questions about his so-called permanent residence. I don't have anything more to say about that at this time, although there are answers to that question. There was more parking available at 1122 King Road, obviously, than a lot of other houses or residents or fraternities or sororities in that area, because they had that little, I don't know, I've never counted exactly how many spots it's supposed to be. Was it supposed to be 4 or something? But you can certainly fit a lot more cars in there. And, I don't know if, I'll remember when you were in that age or if you went to college, you have talents at that age or when you're in college for fitting things like cars into spaces where that many cars are not supposed to fit. So anyway, they could always seem to find a parking spot there. And having that vehicle being shared between the 3 of them, it was a commonplace where that vehicle would be parked, sometimes for a short time. Maybe, let's say Ethan is going to Xana's. He's going to park the car there. Maybe Maisie is going to want to use the car to take her friend somewhere. I don't know. I'm making this situation up. He'll text her. Here it is. They had a situation of how they would leave a set of keys if that was needed, and off they would go. So the point of the story is, that's an awesome question, Angel D. Kelly, do you know if the red Jeep was driven over to 1122 that morning by Hunter Chapin, so the perp wouldn't have seen the red Jeep outside at 4 a.m.? That is correct, and it is the widely held belief by those who were actually there that the red Jeep was not there when the perpetrator was scoping out the house. Absolutely, children should outlive their parents. So sad, my God. I know. Aries Park, it's breathtaking. Hi, American Princess. Welcome. How are you doing? Yes, you're right. American Princess, you've been coming in with some great facts. Yeah, they didn't just have that one car between them, but they did share the vehicle. So does that make sense? Yeah. I appreciate you sharing, Kelly. Absolutely. There's so much speculation about it, and I was sure I'd heard his mom say they drove over that morning. Yes. From everything that I know, and this has never been in question, that is absolutely the case. And I actually, at some point, had a more focused conversation about that. And if I had talked about it right after having those, it was a set of conversations, I probably would have felt comfortable giving even more detail. But at this point, it's been a while, and I do want to revisit that. But I will be happy to find out a little more about that for you if it's something you guys are interested in. My boys can't even share a bottle of Coke without a fight, Yeah. It was not there when the house was being, scoped out that evening. Yeah. Cecile, great question. Yeah. I mean, you are allowed to state your opinion. Please be respectful. That is our rule there. But, if you are going to be stating things as fact, we do ultimately want to know where you are sourcing your information. Okay. All right. So look who it is. It's my girl. I don't intend to, I'm going to play something from Nancy Grace. I don't intend to be like the, constantly promoting Nancy Grace material, but it just so happens that when I sit down to, say, okay, where's this material on this topic that we want to talk about, oftentimes she just came out with something that I find to be interesting on the topic. So here goes our girl, DC, you're stoked.
Is the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, tearing apart the crime scene of the IDAHO4 slay? Why is that happening? Why is the FBI out in Idaho tearing up carpet, looking at the walls, looking at the windows, taking pieces of board? What are they doing? This, as Bryan Kohberger, the doctoral student charged in the slaying of 4 beautiful University of Idaho students in their sleep or half sleep in the middle of the night, the wee early morning around 4 a.m., while he sits in his cell getting a special vegan diet, watching whatever he wants. He has control of his remote on TV. and gathering female admirers on the internet. What's happening? When is Bryan Kohberger going to trial? And is the death penalty still on the table? I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us here at Crime Stories and on SiriusXM 111. First of all, let's kick it off. We've got an all-star panel to make sense of what we're learning right now, but listen first to victim Xana Kernodle's mother.
There are things like in the investigation that I would like to see go differently. I would have liked to see I would like to see more coming from the kids that attended school there, the people that were at the frat party, the fraternity members. What were they all doing? What was happening at the party before?
And you know what? I've got to say to Xana Kernodle's mom saying this, and I don't know what her intention is for saying this, if she's wondering because she's suspicious of them. And if she was, I don't blame her. Those same fraternity members who know that there is no reason to be suspicious of them because they had absolutely positively no hand in this crime also desperately want to be speaking out because they are in many ways suffering because they cannot speak out in memory of their brother, their literal brother, their symbolic brother, and their brother in their heart is their fraternity brother. And, for the sake of their own reputation and lives at this very formidable age in that community because of this, in my opinion, overly broad and overly strict gag order.
They came home. I really just want, and anybody who was at the grub truck with Kaylee and Maddie, or at the bar with Kaylee and Maddie, I would like to see answers coming from those people. It kind of bewilders me that we haven't heard anything from any of them because they were the last people to see these kids alive.
I've got such an incredible panel joining us right now, but I want to go first to Gene Fisher, former Chief Deputy Prosecutor in Boise, Idaho. Idaho is this jurisdiction where the Slays, the 4 murders, went down. She specialized in murder, and you can find her today at buildinghopetoday.org. Jane, you're hearing Xana Kernodle's mother, who has lived through complete hell. Jane, I thought I knew it all about grief and suffering when my fiance was murdered shortly before our wedding. But now that I have the twins, John David and Lucy, I didn't know anything because the worst possible thing that could happen is to lose your child. I'm sure about that. Jane, you hear the mom, you hear Xana Kernodle's mom talking about things that she would like to have seen done differently in this investigation. This is Karen Northington, and she's focusing on the parties leading up to the murders that night, the fraternity sorority parties. We know that several of the 4 were at a food truck really, really late at night, like after 1 a.m. They stopped to get food at a food truck before they went home. Have you, in your practice, Jane, talked to victims' parents and you listen to what they're saying and it may not be relevant to the case? Like the DNA shows that Bryan Kohberger handled the murder weapon and the sheath, because the sheath has his DNA on it and it's practically under one of the dead victims. So maybe what Xana's mother is saying is irrelevant. Maybe it doesn't matter who was at the party 5 hours before, who was at the food truck 3 hours before. On the other hand, Jean, maybe it does matter because Xana's mother thinks 2 people were involved. I don't. She does. But I find the significance, Jean, what if Kohberger was lurking around either of those 2 places? Wouldn't that solidify the case for the state?
Good morning, Nancy. Yeah, I mean, I really feel for for the parents, for the survivors in this. And it's so common to have parents, victims asking some of these other questions and wanting to know exactly what she's asking. Who was at the party? Who was at the food truck? Those sorts of things. Because what's happened is unimaginable, and you just want all the answers and everything that you possibly can to understand how this could have happened. Now, as you said, some of that stuff is irrelevant. It isn't as though, it's certainly not here and not nationwide. I've just seen there hasn't been substantial amount of reporting on this, of law enforcement in the Moscow community. The photos of the girls at the food truck trying to find everybody and anybody who talked to them. And they did do some follow-up, as you recall. They did have and they thought that they had, I think it was the Uber driver, that was the suspect. And I mean, they did do a lot of that.
You're right. And how do you deal with victims' families? I mean, for you and I, we think that is irrelevant because we believe we know who the killer is, and it's not the guy at the food truck, and it's not some drunk frat boy at the whatever house, the Sigma Chi house or whatever house it was. But she's right. We have to exhaust, as prosecutors, every single avenue. What if someone at that party or food truck saw Kohberger? What if they were connected to Kohberger somehow? So I understand where the mother is coming from. I completely understand. As a layperson, especially that's not in the investigation every single day, she thinks, hey, is there relevance? And maybe there is. As of right now, there's not. But you hear Xana's mother speaking out, and later I'm going to let you in on her statements regarding she thinks that there is another person involved. A lot's happening in the case against Bryan Kohberger right now. First of all, there has been a very powerful motion to dismiss the indictment. In other words, throw out the charges. And the judge, whose name coincidentally is John Judge, so he's Judge. That's it. I want you to hear what the judge says about the defense's slew of arguments to have these charges thrown out. Listen.
The Idaho criminal rules, specifically Rule 6.5A, expressly states that probable cause is the standard, not beyond a reasonable doubt, for a grand jury's indictment. And I think I have 3 or 4 recent, because this argument has been circulating in the state. I think I've had 3 or 4 district judge decisions denying the motion and the argument. So I am going to deny that argument.
Whew. Okay. Look, we may think that there was no grounds for the charges to be thrown out, but you get one crackpot judge up on the bench, you don't know what they're going to do. I have had judges, one of the times I was held in contempt, the judge was completely ruling against all the black and white letter of the law. And I said, and his
Nancy Grace held in contempt. No way.
name was Judge Presley. May he rest in peace. I said, Judge Presley, just turn around, and right behind you is a bookshelf. And on that bookshelf is the OCGA, the Official Code of Georgia Annotated. Not just the code, but the annotations, all the case law supporting the law and the interpretation law. If you would just swivel your chair around and grab OCGA 30-blah, and look on page 356, you will see that your ruling is completely contradictory to the law. I was held in contempt, but I was right. It didn't feel very good saying I'm right when I was getting fingerprinted. But you never know what a judge is going to do. This judge did the right thing. What were the claims the defense was mounting? And they had a lot of claims. Listen.
Hours of arguments between Kohberger's lawyers, the prosecution, and the judge have occurred in private, behind closed doors, without cameras. But in court papers, Bryan Kohberger's defense team claims the grand jury was biased, there was insufficient evidence to charge Kohberger in the first place, and that prosecutors withheld evidence that would exonerate Kohberger. While the defense has made these serious allegations, they have yet to show any of the evidence to back up their claims.
Joining me right now, an expert who has been at the scene of the crime along with me. In fact, he directed me to a lot of points of interest. And I don't mean like I'm looking at Niagara Falls, that kind of point of interest. I mean, look at this. This proves X. Look at that. That proves Y. Drive this route, not that route. Look over here, not over there. That's what I'm talking about. Chris McDonough is with me, director of the Cold Case Foundation, former homicide detective, at least 300 homicides under his belt, host of a YouTube channel where I found him, The Interview Room. Chris McDonough, how
highly recommended by this channel as well.
Upsetting. It never failed to upset me when the defense would claim, oh, she's withholding evidence, when I had handed over my whole file except for my own work product, my notes, my questions, my own theories. But yet that argument would still be made, and it's a black eye for you, the homicide investigator, and the prosecutor, because it looks like you're playing dirty pool, that you're going to win through nefarious means. And that's no win at all, because it'll be reversed on appeal. We really take the punches in the gut, don't we?
100%, Nancy. And one of the worst things that could ever happen, to your point, is a rogue judge taking all of these.
Oh, and by the way, this recording from Nancy Grace is very recent.
All of these points of the.
Sorry, Nancy. I don't like to take things that just came out, but she's got her own viewership. Which reminds me, I will give her credit, of course, in the description. Everybody knows who Nancy Grace is, but I think there were some very good points brought out in this particular broadcast.
Law into consideration and even giving them a valued weight. I mean, it's every family's nightmare. It's every prosecutor's nightmare, the investigator, public safety's nightmare, that the defense is able to say, hey, they still are not giving us evidence, when in fact, they've turned over all the evidence under Brady to the defense, and they know what they have. It's right in front of them. And I think this is the big push that's taking place right now, and we're just going to, like always, just see how this kind of plays out here.
Well, bottom line, you don't sign up to be a homicide investigator or a prosecutor to win Miss Congeniality, Chris McDonough. Nobody's going to go home crown Miss Sweet Potato. That's not happening. We are going to take the hits and keep on going. I mean, listen, if I paid attention to everything that's said about me or our program on Twitter and Facebook and Insta and wherever, I'd be hiding under the bed right now. Just, if you don't have a thick skin, you better develop one, and quickly. Guys, not only in the last days has the judge denied the defense motion to throw out the charges, the FBI has been back at the murder scene. Some call it the murder house. It's the crime scene. The FBI has been back sniffing around and tearing apart sections of the home, including.
All right. I want to pause there. Another nice pause. Nancy does some good, nice pauses, like you just said, Angel. But I just have to read this comment because, guys, this is why I have to take breaks from talking about this case occasionally, from taking in information about this case in the form of across, the very platform that I have my channel on or any other social media, because this makes me go absolutely fucking out of my mind. Angel D asked, why are there people talking about the defense trying to suggest a secret identical twin, allegedly? Seriously. Because, of course, as y'all know, an identical twin would be the only person that would have the same DNA as Bryan Kohberger. So when the facts start to close in, when the evidence starts to stack up, when it starts to tell a story that adds up to a strong case, you grasp for straws. And if I'm one of those straws, there is the fictional story of Bryan Kohberger possibly having an identical secret twin. That's the only one you got to pick up. That's what you're picking up. Some people.
Yanking up carpet and more. Take a listen to our friends at Crime Online.
FBI agents have entered the King Road home in Moscow, Idaho, hoping to gain more information as the prosecution prepares for trial. According to NBC News, the University of Idaho says investigators asked to go back into the home and gather documentation as they construct visual and audio exhibits, as well as a physical model of the home. Experts say this will help as the prosecution explains where evidence was found and why the placement of said evidence is important. Families of the victims have worked hard to prevent the King Road structure from being torn down as was originally planned. The family of Kaylee Gonzalez and the father of Xana Kernodle said they were grateful the university is waiting until after the trial to demolish the home because it remains the biggest piece of evidence.
I want to circle back to Dr. Angela Arnold, a renowned psychiatrist, joining us about why the victims' families may not want this home torn down. But first, I want to talk about something that I understand, and that is the probative value of this home. Do we still need the home? Why do we need the home? What, if anything, can it prove? It's been combed over with a fine-tooth comb. So why do I care that it's not torn down? Well, for one reason, correct me if I'm wrong, joining me, Dave Mack, crimeonline.com investigative reporter, the house was to be demolished, but that's been delayed, especially since Kohberger waived his right to a speedy trial. Correct. Now, this delay, I believe, has allowed prosecutors and investigators to create a very detailed 3D model of the home, and that could potentially spare jurors a visit to the crime scene that was left literally, quote, dripping in blood. You know what? I would want them at the crime scene, but that's just me. I would want them to see the real thing, but I would also like, Dave Mack, that 3D visual in court for me to use as demonstrative purposes. That's in the law. You've got demonstrative evidence and you've got, as I call it, real evidence. Real evidence is like fingerprints, DNA, things taken from the scene. Demonstrative evidence is evidence you create to demonstrate something to the jury. Dave Mack, tell me about why is the FBI sniffing around the King Road address?
Well, Nancy, they're building, as you mentioned, the models, okay, the 3D model. And the real issue here is it's a 3-story house on King Road. And for some people, including Xana Kernodle's mom, they just don't see how one person can accomplish all that happened, stabbing to death 4 people in that building in a very brief period of time. What the FBI is doing, by building this model, they're going to be able to the prosecution will be able to walk the jurors through it one by one and show them how it could be done and was done by one person, they believe, Bryan Kohberger. They'll be able to show them with that model exactly where he came in, where he went, the timetable they built inside the house, and how he exited. They'll be able to do all that with this 3D model. That's why they're there.
That's going to be some 3D model, because you know what?
Okay, now not everybody is of the same opinion that is why the FBI has truly recently gone back into 1122 King Road. I would love you to answer the question I just put up on a poll for those of you who are in the live chat, and for those of you who are watching the replay, thanks so much for being here. I'll let you know the results at the end. And I asked, why do you think that the FBI has recently gone back into 1122 King Road? Do you think that they are building a virtual 3D model? Do you think that they really lost evidence? Do you think that they are planting evidence? Or do you think it's something else? Those are kind of the things that I've heard people speculating on. I would love to know what you think.
What the defense is probably going to do? Nancy, the defense is probably going to turn around and ask to take the jurors to the crime scene. And so help me, I would not be trumped by the defense. If anybody was going to demand a visit to the crime scene, it would be me, the prosecutor. And you know why? Because I would want the defense to be able to argue in closing arguments. They didn't want you to see the crime scene. We did. What were they hiding? No, 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 and no. Who's that jumping in? Jean. Is that Jean? Jean Fisher?
Jean.
Jump in.
Yep. Well, you have to remember too. I don't. I really don't believe that this case is going to take place in Latah County in the small community in Moscow, Idaho. Boise is 300 miles south and 6 hours on a mountain road. Idaho Falls, which is maybe the next biggest, is 10 hours. North of Moscow's Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, it's quite small. So, I mean, there are some of those issues as well, quite frankly, as well, as far as the crime scene and getting back up there, and what that actually would
Okay, let me
entail.
ask you a lightning round. Has the venue been changed yet, Gene Fisher?
No, because they still haven't set the case for trial.
Is there a motion to change venue?
There won't be one till the case is set for trial.
So, no. So let's burn that bridge when we get there. But you're right. If the trial is moved, say, 5 hours away, it would not be expedient to take the jury 5 hours away to see the crime scene. That is why I predict if they do get a motion to change venue, it will be moved maybe 3 hours or less away so the jury can go see it in one day and return. Now, of course, we learned that visiting a crime scene is fraught with danger and reversible error, because when you see the crime scene, it's not the same as it was the day of the crimes. Number one, that can be argued on appeal. You don't know if somebody will be standing outside. How easy would it be for some jackass to yell out, Kohberger did it, or Kohberger's innocent, or something, and that could ruin the whole case and be grounds for a motion to dismiss the case and get a whole new jury. So when you take people to a crime scene, you never know what's going to happen. And dare I remind everybody on the panel, when my colleague, Johnny Cochran, may he rest in peace, took the O.J. Simpson jury to the O.J. Simpson home, and they had completely done it over. No more pictures of O.J. with busty models around. There were pictures instead of a Norman Rockwell painting and him with his mother, and I think a giant cross was put up on the wall. You don't know how that scene's going to be altered by the time the jury gets there. So Dr. Angela Arnold joining me, as I mentioned earlier, a renowned psychiatrist. You can find her at angelaarnoldmd.com. Dr. Angie, there may be more at play with the victims' families not wanting the home to be torn down. Now, as I've told you before, I have never once sought out the spot where my fiance was murdered. I don't want to go there. Whenever I think about it, sometimes it still gives me a horrible, like a migraine headache. And I don't want to go there. I don't want that in my head with everything else. But the significance of this home, I don't know what it means to the 4 victims' families.
Well, Nancy, right now it stands as a sort of a shrine to what happened. And this isn't over. I mean, the trial hasn't even started yet. And I imagine what it signifies to the family is this: if the house is torn down and demolished, it's over. Where this happened is over. And
like it never happened.
Exactly. And the man hasn't even been brought to trial. I mean, I find it very disturbing that they want to tear the house down.
And you know what? What's being said right here, Nancy Grace, kind of parlays into a really good point that I think that Sarah Jean just made. Hi, Sarah Jean. How are you doing? Says, what I find strange is I thought it wasn't a crime scene anymore. They had cleared it and were going to bulldoze it. So maybe they were really just doing the 3D thing or looking for anything missed. You know, that is a really good point with all this conjecture that I've been hearing different people theorizing about why the FBI is really going back in there. Now, first of all, I think if it was anything that was like off, or I just don't think they're doing anything nefarious personally. I mean, has law enforcement done wrong? Absolutely. I will talk about it. I will tell you when I think it. I think in this particular moment in time right now, in this instance, that is not the case. It is no longer a crime scene. So people, said, oh, they lost all of this evidence. And so they're going back to, it is no longer a crime scene. It is not, it is not replete and fertile with, crime scene evidence the way it was nearly a year ago. Those things, that people are saying that they messed up on, and I'm not saying that they didn't mess up, or that they lost, or that they're lacking. Well, they're going back to do that now, just kind of all fudge it together. Those possibilities are no longer available. And I think that Sarah Jean's point, whether that or comment, whether you were saying that's what you were saying or not, that's kind of what I took from it. And I think it is a very good point. I think that's also what the guest on Nancy Grace is saying. And somebody in the comments just said, oh my gosh, she asked a question and then she just keeps talking. That this is part of the, both the blessings and the curses of Nancy Grace. And you are also observing her variable emotional state. Yes. I'm not standing by. I am not swearing Nancy Grace is perfect, but here she is.
But there also doesn't need to be a jump that goes from let's not tear the house down to, oh, we're going to bring the jury there. But I think the house needs to stand as the place where this happens.
I hear is that Dr. Monty Miller?
No, that's Chris.
Chris McDonough, you're saying you agree. And Dr. Angie, I can't explain to you why I don't want the house torn down yet. Maybe something along the lines of it as if it never happened, or
exactly. It's
plus,
just not right, Nancy.
I mean, to you, Chris McDonough, Director of Cold Case Foundation. I'm going to circle back to Dr. Monty Miller and Dr. Michelle Dupree joining us. Chris, it ain't over until it's over, and I don't want any destruction of evidence until this thing is over.
Yes, and what's happening right
now, I want to ask another question of you guys, because I personally do agree with Nancy Grace on that. With everything, that I just said in response to Sarah Jean's comment and what was being talked about in Nancy Grace's broadcast, that there are some things you absolutely cannot recreate. It is not a crime scene in this kind of like robust and fertile and, gift-giving sense of, the way it was almost a year ago, with DNA that was available to be tested and things, hadn't been cleaned, they hadn't dried, they hadn't this, they hadn't that. I can't even imagine the amount of evidence that was there to be discovered. Hopefully, in my dreams and prayers, properly collected and then properly analyzed and evaluated. Do I think that process happened without fail in this case? Hell no. But that is the goal, right? I do think I think that there are things about that house, even without it being a crime scene evidence rich environment, the way it would be in the hours and even days after the crime occurred. There is something to be understood about appreciating, just kind of the spatial situation. Think about, the jurors in the Murdaugh case. Although we know that their minds may have been tainted now, I still believe several of them reporting this. I absolutely believe this was their experience. I know other jurors have said similar things when visiting the crime scene, and it just makes sense. Oh my God, I was envisioning Moselle as, the house being so much closer to the dog kennels, or that barn or the airplane hangar, or whatever it is, being this kind of a distance from the dog kennels. Talking about where Paul and Maggie were, likely positioned when horrific things started going down. But when I actually saw it, I was like, whoa, they are really far apart. Or to a different juror, oh my gosh, they were so much closer together than I was thinking in my mind. Because before actually seeing something that, provides, something concrete, the minds of two different jurors could add more space, and then one takes away space. So they might be envisioning something completely different from one another than exists in reality. We do want our jurors to be as grounded in reality as possible, right? And I think that it could possibly be determined as the pretrial phase goes on and the trial begins that there might be some value to experiencing, that physical space, and that opportunity will be lost forever should the house be razed. I personally think it's a terrible idea. What do y'all think? Let's see. Yeah, Angel D, really good point. It's like people saw the rental photos and the CGI walkthrough of 1122, and then they visit the house outside, of course, and they think it's way smaller than it looks online. Right. Yeah. Your remediation of the house happened. I believe they sent in the remediation crews on December 30. It was this like December 30th, right? Which happens to be my birthday as well. It was like right on the day, I think just before we knew he was arrested, or right around that time. And then something happened. I'm not clear on how that all actually went down. I think at one point I was, at one point you probably were, but a lot of things have been said that aren't true at this point, and I would want to go revisit my facts before saying anything more. Tina says, I believe they are doing the 3D model and to be able to destroy the house and what they're hiding. Del Morton's statement doesn't match the layout of the house. Doreen says, yeah, I'm very interested in why in your statement here. That's a really interesting statement, and I think you could have something very interesting to say. If you said a little more about that, Tina, would you be willing to tell us a little more about your thoughts there about specifically why Dylan Morton's statement does not match the layout of the house? And I can kind of speculate about some things you might mean, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. Yeah, please do. Please keep it respectful in chat. Be respectful to one another, victims and their families, and what the moderators say goes.
Right now, Nancy, there is why the FBI went back. And let's just talk about a couple of things real fast. Is one, they're doing a laser recreation, right, to create this 3D model, and that's called a FARO, F-A-R-O. That's the device that they use. But what else they're doing is
you just hey.
Yeah.
FARO, explain that, please. I'll just throw something out and drop it on us like a bomb and not explain it.
Sorry about that. Well, what this device does is it spins in a room, and it can literally go down to an exact, dimension within an eighth of an inch. And so it'll basically mirror everything within inside of that room. But the other test that they're running in there, I would assume, is an acoustics test. And they're going to correlate that back to any video that may have been in the neighborhood if there was sound on that video. And they're going to correlate that to the exact spot of where that sound would have originated inside of that house. So to tear that house down right now, to the doctor's point, and I know you talked about this early on, I think that would be a very huge mistake ultimately until the trial is completed. And at that point, let it be what it needs to be.
I know the state thinks they've gotten everything that they need, and the defense has had the same opportunity as the state to inspect the home, but I would rather them wait till it's all over. Dr. Monty Miller joining me, director, forensic DNA expert. You can find Dr. Monty at forensicdnaexperts.com. Dr. Monty Miller, I believe they've gotten all the DNA evidence that they're going to get once you let a lot of people in the.
Okay, so before we move on to the DNA evidence, just for those of you who are curious about this FARO light measurement technique that is said that they might be utilizing right now to create these 3D images. Let's see here. Let me find you just a short little something. I had it up earlier. Let me see if I can find it here. I don't want the article. I want the video. Okay, I think I got it here. Well, here, let me just show you before I can't find the video more, but let me just read you a little bit of this. I think it comes to the video real quick. So one of the advantages of this FARO lighting measurement capabilities is forensic analysis and pre-incident planning, digitalizing crime scenes and structures with 3D reality captured solutions, quickly capturing details of a crime scene for thorough investigation, reconstruction, and legal persecution. Also, understand the structural and positional details of a building for safety planning purposes. Accurately visualize any scene or building with FARO. Maybe you're under pressure to capture complete, accurate views of a crime scene you investigate or reconstruct, or maybe you need to digitize the details of a building in order to develop a safety plan for emergencies. Either way, you probably know that 3D reality capture technology will do that job well, but you don't have time to learn how to use it, so this is the solution they're offering. And they tout speed of scanning, accuracy of data, reliable post-sale support. Well, that's something we don't really care about, really. And they talk about its abilities to reconstruct crashes, the many things it can do in crime scene investigation. And hey, maybe this is why they're in there right now, because it is also handy, as this sales website tells us, in courtroom presentations. Create vivid 2D and 3D presentations that make powerful impact in court. Courtroom presentations based on 3D scanning technology can help a jury understand the facts of a case in a clear and visual way. With the help of FARO, courtroom participants make informed decisions. So, I mean, obviously, this is something that this is moving towards. As far as this case goes. Forensic crews had a few challenges, and they were limiting their efficiency and quality of their client deliverables, meaning their court presentation. They're spending too much time on the scene collecting data. They sometimes found that they'd missed measurements. It's human. They did not have a method for documenting scenes in a way that provides compelling courtroom presentations, and they had a problem obtaining higher levels of precision and accuracy when they had to copy the point of interest. Which I think leads to anaphylaxis, who is retired law enforcement, saying that maybe they were trying to create something that was to scale, right? All right. Take it back to Nancy.
Home evidence is ruined. They've gone through the home with a fine-tooth comb, on whether they should demolish the home.
Well, I mean, just from a crime scene DNA perspective, you wouldn't want to destroy it because you don't know if you're going to need that house again. You know, the defense could raise issues, the prosecution could raise issues, and at this point, you can always go back and look at it. Once you demolish it, you know, you can't, and there's no real benefit to having it destroyed at this point. So why not just keep it till the trial's over?
Guys, a lot happening in the case right now, but I want you to hear more. We've had the motion to dismiss by the defense has been denied. We have the FBI swarming the crime scene again. Now, listen to this.
Yeah, no, I don't want them to. Not until after the trial. I mean, for obvious reasons. I mean, obviously the jurors would maybe want to do a walkthrough, or, you know, maybe there's something they missed. I mean, obviously, yeah, I definitely do not want them to tear it down. Not yet. Eventually, yes, but not until this is all blown over.
You're hearing Xana Kernodle's mother, Karen Northington, agreeing with us. Don't tear that house down. Now, her feelings, I don't know if they're based in the evidence or if they're based in emotions, but she wants the house standing. Let's move forward. Listen.
Bryan Kohberger's defense team now wants to know exactly how DNA was collected at the crime scene that prosecutors say places Kohberger at the scene of the crime. The term IgG stands for investigative genetic genealogy, and it was this process that was used to collect DNA from another source and then match it to the DNA found on the knife sheath that was found on the bed next to the bodies of Kaylee Gonzalez and Madison Mogen. The sheath was found face down, partially under Madison Mogen's body and partially under a comforter on the bed. The DNA found on the sheath was initially compared to DNA from trash recovered outside the Kohberger family home in Pennsylvania last year. Using IgG allowed investigators to build a family tree of potential relatives of the suspect. Once a cheek swab from Bryan Kohberger was obtained, investigators used a more direct DNA comparison using technology similar to that employed by services like Ancestry.com or 23andMe.
Okay, Dr. Monty Miller with us, famed DNA expert. Dr. Monty, explain, and also if you could give us, dummy down for me. I'm just a trial lawyer. You're the scientist. Explain IgG and what are they talking about?
So what happens is in criminal investigations and with criminal DNA.
All right. Before we go into the murky world of IgG, I do want to address the footprint because I see you're all talking about chat, and I think this is it's worth discussing. So, you know, kind of I picked up the conversation starting at let's see, Gordon. Welcome, Gordon. How are you doing? It says, come on, think about it. Footprint cleaned outside Del Mortensen's room. Who did that? Some other people kind of responded. I was just noticing kind of his comments because they were things I wanted to respond to and have a conversation about. And Gordon just says, that's my understanding that the footprint was cleaned. And that is the understanding of a lot of people. And I mean, that it is in the realm of all possibilities that is what happened. Let's see. You know, and then Cecile said, Gordon Layton doesn't imply that it's intentional cleaning has happened. So, you know, here's the thing with the footprint. So the footprint is mentioned in the probable cause affidavit. It is problematic for a number of reasons, of course. You know, I mean, we could probably, you know, brainstorm a list of them right here and now. It is one footprint. It is not a strong footprint. It was not found upon the first look. They had to use, God, what the hell is that called? Whatever it is, chemicals to actually find it. It wasn't like a standout footprint. You would imagine in a scene like that, with how it has been described to us by first responders and others, that it was a blood-soaked scene. You know, there are questions like, how is there not victim's blood outside the home? How did the assailant get away without tracking all over the place? And why in God's name would there be a footprint or a footprint of interest if it wasn't like very bloody like a lot of the scene was? From our reasonable understanding. Well, we don't know that footprint was laid there that evening. And I think I talked about this last time we did a live stream on this case. And, you know, just my thoughts on it, you know, like being realistic, just upon thinking about it very casually. You know, this is a house where a lot of people lived. They were college students. A lot of them, you know, had a lot of energy. They were very athletic. You know, they were running around, they were drinking. University of Idaho University of Idaho or Washington, I think it's Idaho, happens to be a college that is known for students drinking too much and falling off of balconies to their horrific, like ungodly, unfortunate, God rest their souls, demise. So, you know, like things happen, all right? So there's also a lot of people that say, you know, there was recreational drug use. I'm sorry, YouTube, I can't baby talk anymore, but like that's what is said, you know, going on in that drug house. I certainly do not think that there was like, you know, cartel connections and these major profiting outfits happening that were headquartered in that house. But I am certainly not saying that I do not think that that was going on in that house. Well, you know, we know from watching Pulp Fiction, and of course we don't know from any reason other than watching Pulp Fiction, if you snort a substance, you might get a bloody nose. Women menstruate, people bleed. You might be, they like to cook there. You might be there's a video where Maddie is she's making stuffed peppers. Someone might be slicing the pepper and they might slice their finger. And, there are other reasons why there would be a footprint found in that house, even a footprint with blood on it, right? So I do think that's all that we know about that footprint. There is no guarantee that that footprint is from that night. I think it's talked about a lot because it was really one of the only traces of the assailant other than a microscopic speck of DNA that was located on the button snap of the knife sheath, partially located underneath Madison Mogen's body and partially underneath the comforter on the bed upon which Madison Mogen's body and Kaylee Gonsalves's bodies were found. God rest their souls. I think that's what we know about that footprint, guys. I've given it decent amount of research, given a lot of thought. I've listened to what others have said. I really think that is all that we know. Jody says, her shock phase probably wasn't 3 seconds long. The PCA doesn't say. I can tell you from having a background in psychology, being a behavioral therapist and special educator, and knowing something about the condition that I believe she was referring to as being in a frozen shock phase. I put a video out talking about humans, the 5 different responses. We call them the 5 Fs. They all just happen to have like a little analogy that has a word related to it that starts with F: freeze, flop, feign, fight, and flight. This is something that is determined not by your conscious mind, but by your parasympathetic nervous system that is not run by your conscious mind. It is a survival mechanism that is intentionally designed by our brilliantly intelligent designer to not listen to the conscious mind, because sometimes our cerebral thinking minds do not tell us to do the correct thing if we are talking about a matter of life or death. In fact, oftentimes they do not. Weird, right? So it is perfectly feasible that she went into any of those 5 states, none of them being her choice. None of them would be your choice. I truly believe that, unless you were a highly trained first responder or member of the military or something like that. Maybe someone like, I don't know, anaphylaxis could handle, some kind of fear like that because she is well trained and experienced. We thank her for that service that she has given to society. But most people aren't going to be able to make decisions when they are faced with something that is truly of shocking fear value. That being said, there is no prescribed duration that shock phase is going to last for. However, and I have done, American Psychological Journal level research on this after this case, making sure that I knew what I was talking about. Being in that state of shock for 8 hours is not how it goes. Even talking in time in terms of hours is not highly documented. Okay, so that's what I can say about that.
Is typically used in court. They use one kind of technology to read the DNA. A completely different kind of technology is used for the ancestry, the IgG type DNA. And so what they did was they took the DNA and they ran it for ancestry in order to develop the suspects. And they used that to identify Kohberger as one of the suspects. Then they collected trash from the house to connect it to Kohberger's father, and they could tell from that the DNA, at that point, when they identified that it was probably a son of the father, they were able to get DNA from Kohberger himself, compare it to the DNA by traditional genetic forensic means, and they were able to identify him that way. So the genetic genealogy, the IgG stuff, was used to find him. That's not what was used to identify him as the person in the house. But the same DNA was used, but it was used first for genetic genealogy to find him, and then it was run a separate way, a different time, by different technology to identify him as the source of that DNA.
At this juncture, the state is claiming they're not going to use IgG, that type of DNA process, at trial. But the reality is, if the questions are asked on cross, it will come into play. To Dr. Michelle Dupree joining us, a forensic pathologist, medical examiner, former detective in Lexington County, author of Money, Mischief, and Murder, the Murdaugh Saga, the rest of the story, and she literally wrote the book, Homicide Investigation Field Guide. Dr. Dupree, weigh in.
Nancy, I think I understand it sort of from both sides, but keeping the house, especially right now, is so important because things could have been missed. And I think that they need to go back and be able to, I would want the jury there. I'm totally with you. I would want the jury to see this. But if you're the defense attorney, I guess you wouldn't.
I don't know. I think the defense may be able to argue all sorts of things once the jury gets in that home. Big question, is the jury going to see the home? A lot of rulings that are going to impact this case are happening right now. Listen.
The DNA matching Bryan Kohberger to the knife sheath could be the prosecution's strongest piece of evidence tying Kohberger to the murders. KTVB reports Kohberger's lawyers claim they need the information about the DNA collection to help prepare their defense. But the prosecution says they did not use IgG to obtain any warrants, and they're concerned about innocent relatives' identities being made public. Judge John Judge said he will consider the interests of the defense and the prosecution as he reviews all of the IgG information the state and the FBI have, and then he will decide what can be disclosed.
Now, listen, the state, and I have mixed feelings about this, but this is something that, I have been able to follow the chronological line of what the defense and the state have said. It is checked out, and I think that this line of reasoning, like in their defense, kind of, is very logical. So the creators, so IgG is a very up and coming field of forensic science and study, right? I think we can all agree on that. There are not a lot of laws laid down about it right now. That is why, I think it's easier for people to get a little sneaky with it or step out of bounds with it, or maybe it's not intentional. There's not a lot of road signs for those practicing investigative genetic genealogy right now, as far as, you have crossed a legal threshold. Okay. I mean, there's some, not nearly as much as other forensic investigative technologies and methods. So all along, the state has said, well, listen, defense, I know that you're asking these questions of us. You want, these profiles that were developed, and we have learned that it was by FBI that led us ultimately to find Bryan Kohberger's father's DNA sample in the trash and link it to the suspect, that allowed us to take the buccal swab from Kohberger that was the 5.37 octillion % chance, greater chance it was him than any other human being that had ever walked the face of the earth, that huge probability number. They have said all along that they did not, let's start with what I first said. The people who are the founders, so to speak, that is my term, of investigative genetic genealogy say that investigative genetic genealogy is a tip. It is an investigative step. It is an investigative technique. It should by no means be the be all end all. In fact, it's been said by several of the most renowned professionals in that up and coming field that they don't even feel comfortable as having the genetic investigative genealogy results being part of a probable cause affidavit. And I believe them. The defense, the state and the prosecution have said all along that we used IgG in just that way, is a way that the creators or the founders, so to speak, again, my terminology, have touted that it should be used as an investigative tool, as a step, as a way of generating leads and, possibly eliminating some no-go avenues. We did not use it as a basis for the PCA. We did not even present those findings to the grand jury that was impaneled before the pretrial hearing could take place that ultimately indicted Bryan Kohberger. And what I personally think, by using the proper standard, in my opinion, after reading through boring parts of the Idaho law. So I don't see a problem with all of that. I initially felt personally that the defense was right for wanting to see how those profiles were created. I still think that they should be able to see that, but at the end of the day, it truly is going to be a moot point because it was an investigative tool that they used to generate a lead, as the founders, so to speak, of IGG have said it should be used. There is no foul there, in my opinion. If somebody thinks differently, go ahead and put it in chat. I will try to catch it, and I'd be happy to speak your opinion.
This is what's happening. The state has used IGG science to narrow down potential suspects. A well-established buccal or buccal swab was used to positively identify Bryan Kohberger. Kohberger was already identified.
I'm sorry to break this up again, but I just have to before this. Angel says, lots of IG pics of Dill Mortensen wearing Vans, Leighton Vans print outside the second bedroom where she said she stood as a witness. Oh yeah, it could have been her shoes. So you're making the right point. Dude, kids of people of that age group, I work with them on the other side of the country, like they all wear Vans. And particularly at the University of Idaho, you can see so many pictures of so many students wearing Vans. Have a pair of Vans just sitting there on the floor in the background. Vans is just a very, 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 very popular brand of shoe, all of them having a similar looking sole that could have left that print that may or may not have been left on the evening in question or not. I personally think we're making too much of a deal out of the Leighton footprint. I could be wrong about that. It's just my sense.
Identified by his car. Isn't that correct, Dave Mack? So the state could have gone forward without the IgG test at all, based on the car being probable cause, right?
They were able to track, yes, you're absolutely right, Nancy. They had other means of going about this, which is what they're pointing out now. They're saying that this IgG stuff is irrelevant. It's not part of our case. It was just a tool, but they had other ways of identifying him. As you mentioned, the car, it is the perfect, it actually puts him where he needed to be in terms of what the prosecution is looking at. So you're dead on right. They had other ways of going after Kohberger besides the IgG. They're just using all the tools in the toolbox.
Guys, the case is culminating. The case is rapidly moving toward trial. When will the trial date be? We all know that once the death penalty is announced, then the delay will be even longer. Take a listen to our friends at Crime Online.
The parents of Kaylee Gonzalez recently spoke out about the death penalty for the murder of their daughter and 3 others. Steve Gonzalez said they wanted the death penalty rather than a life sentence. And he mentioned how BTK, Dennis Rader, gets special treatment in prison because he's smart. He writes papers for other inmates. But a death penalty sentence would put the killer in a cell 23 hours a day, waiting, regardless of how long it takes before there is an execution.
In the midst of all of this, one of the victim's mother has been forced into the position of defending her daughter's reputation. How is a beautiful young girl who was murdered, half asleep or fully asleep, somehow become the target of derision and false rumors? Listen to Kara Northington defending her daughter.
I think there's a lot of rumors going around that she was a drug dealer, or this is somehow like a cartel hit because she owed the cartel money. That's just not true. She wasn't a drug dealer. She was going to school. She had a job. She was working. She was doing all the right things. she wasn't on drugs or dealing drugs. She did like to party. She was in college. She drank with her friends and partied, but it wasn't anything like drug dealing or anything like that. So I think those rumors just really, those are what I would say have wronged her.
And I just have to say here, because I do have some like deeper connection to people that actually knew these victims. I stand by Karen Northington completely in her statement there. And, when this first all happened and people were bringing up, drug connection suspicions, and I certainly looked into it, and I've heard stories and I've told stories, and I don't tell those stories that I've learned from people that actually knew the victims, because they have been blown out of proportion. And in a couple of cases, then using my channel as the source, which is false. Exactly like Karen Northington, mother of Xana Kernodle, said, she was in college. She had fun. Lots of people that age are drinking. They're experimenting with things. It doesn't, like, that's what's up. Anything beyond that, from the account of everybody that I have spoken to personally or heard talking about, any of these victims on, any of the, except for, two people that spoke out who were proven to be con artists, catfish, liars, promoted by a couple channels in particular, you might know who I'm talking about. Other than those people, with their very clear motives for lying, everybody has said the same thing. And I just do want to say that is the stance of the channel, that we find no connection between any of the victims being drug dealers or cartel activity or anything of the sort. I think any kind of conjecture, in my opinion, honestly, at this point, is a waste of time. If you think differently, I do respect your opinion, but I am going to tell you that I feel as the channel creator, I feel pretty strongly in that. So I'm not willing to go very far down any road that implies, against what Karen Northington is saying here.
I don't understand why crime victims, as young and innocent as these four are being dragged through the mud. Dr. Angela Arnold, to top it all off, here you hear the parents of these victims having to defend the reputations of their children. Who are these trolls attacking the victims?
It's hideous. It's absolutely hideous, Nancy. I believe that people start rumors for a lot of different reasons. And one of the reasons is so that they can feel like, well, if I have never done that, if I have never participated in that kind of activity, or if my children don't do that, then they're less likely to be murdered. So there's a reason why she was murdered.
And I'm going to tell you, from a psychological perspective, this person speaking here is spot on. This is one of the great defense mechanisms that our mind has readily available to protect us from the possibility of the horrors that happened to these victims. And it's something that your psyche employs all the time on, a scale that ranges without you knowing it. We are always protecting ourselves psychologically. As tough as we think we are mentally, I'm telling you, it is a proven, tried and true fact in psychology. It's happening all the time.
It's the most hideous thing in the world to all of a sudden create a story about a victim.
As if this teen girl was murdered because she's part of the cartel. Of course, Xana had just turned 20, and she's connected to a Colombian drug lord? It's insane.
Right. And Nancy, okay, and so what if she parties? Kids are supposed to party when they're in college, and you're supposed to have a good time. And so this girl gets murdered, and now people are going to say ugly things about her. Why weren't they saying ugly things about her previous to this, if she was such a hideous person?
I mean, Chris McDonough, you have investigated so many homicide cases. This is straight out of the defense playbook. Attack the victim. Don't look at my client. Look at the victim. They're horrible. And you could not find any more beautiful and precious college students than these four. So what if she had a couple of drinks? Nobody cares. She was slaughtered in her sleep. Where's this coming from? And isn't it true you see it in practically every homicide case?
Yeah, but I think we're at a different point here, Nancy. I mean, and the civility of what's taking place here in our society. This is just an example of it. This poor mother, when we hear her heartfelt pleas about defending the reputation of her daughter, what's her crime? Her crime is she went to bed that night and she was in her bedroom, and yet this poor mother, and I know that feeling. I know the depth of that feeling.
To you, Gene Fisher, veteran trial lawyer, that always happens. Is it right? No, it's horribly wrong. And it always happens. Blaming the victim somehow.
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time, but I think in this case, it has really, it's really bad. I mean, some of the things that have been written and said about the victims in this case, even the surviving victims. I mean, it's one thing that they're attacking the victims, but they're also really attacking the surviving victims and coming up with these wild stories. And I think that comment about the lack of civility really does show a really sad state of where we are right now in our nation, quite frankly.
As long as I can remember, as far back as I can recall trying cases, the victims were always attacked. I don't think it's anything new. It's always happened, and it's always been horrible. Listen to more of Xana's mother, now in the position of having to defend her murdered daughter. Listen.
Well, Xana was an amazing girl. She was really funny. She was fun to be around. She always made sure everybody around her was having fun. She was just very happy, go lucky person. She loved her friends, loved her family very much. She was very dedicated to everything she did. She was just an amazing person.
I hate
full of life.
I hate that the mother is in this position where she feels like she has to defend her murdered daughter's reputation. Some world-class a-hole is spreading false rumors about Xana and the other victims and the survivors. But Xana's mother has come up with a very unique theory. Listen.
To me, it seemed like more than one person did this in such a short amount of time. The time frame that they're giving, there's just no way that one person could have done it. So I think that if he is responsible, that he had help.
So trying to figure out who would that other person be. To Dr. Monty Miller, this is why the DNA is so important. No other identifiable person's DNA is at the scene other than Kohberger's.
Well, they did find some DNA from some other people, but they weren't able to identify it. That was a house that other people were in. It wasn't isolated with just the residents in there. So it's natural that you would find DNA from other people that were in that house, but they weren't able to identify it. So they wouldn't be able to know whether or not some of the other DNA was attached to the crime or whether it was just attached to somebody visiting. That's different with the knife sheath, where that was clearly something that was probably a part of the crime and had the DNA from whoever brought that knife there. The other thing is that I wanted to bring up about the DNA is, with the defense wanting the, DNA from the ancestry testing, part of what they may be looking for too is did they develop any other suspects other than Bryan Kohberger? So they want to know, do we have any value in that information for us to find somebody else rather than our client? So there's a lot going on with the DNA here, more than you would think. And they certainly are going to try to identify any of the DNA that they found in that house, but they don't necessarily have a connection to the crime with any of the other DNA.
Exactly. Where the other DNA was found, I believe, is nowhere near the dead bodies. But we'll see. And Dr. Michelle Dupree, forensic pathologist and expert, isn't it true that the wounds on the victims' bodies indicate one type of weapon?
Yes, Nancy, that is true. And we can often tell that, of course, by the wounds themselves.
How do you do that with knife wounds? This is very critical because it's right to question the evidence. Xana's mother's correct. You've got to test every piece of evidence, see what it proves or disproves. And she should wonder, was there more than one person? As far as I can evaluate the evidence and analyze it, it seems like there's one person. But you have to test the evidence. So what do the wounds prove, if anything?
Well, we measure them. We measure the wounds, and then we can actually make a cast or a mold of the wounds many times, and then we can compare that to a cast made from the actual weapon itself. And they're very, very similar, or similar enough that we can say that it is the same weapon.
Justice moves forward as we wait for the trial of Bryan Kohberger. Goodbye, friend.
Guys, thank you for watching Crime Online with Nancy Grace here on YouTube. To get the very latest, subscribe to Crime Online here.
All right, guys, just give me 1 second here. I was just looking for a certain video. All right. All right, that's not it, but that's cool. Okay. So, you know, that is all of the talk about the FBI going back into the house. And I am also working on just going over the history of the FBI's role in this investigation from the start. And I actually think it kind of paints an interesting picture. Let me see what you guys have to say here in chat. And welcome to everybody who's come in. Welcome everybody who's watching the replay. So glad you are here with us. Oh, hey, thank you very much. Yes, the channel reached 40,000 subscribers, and thank you guys so much for being a part of it. I'm honored, and I appreciate y'all so very much. Oh, hey, Dizzy Lizzie, thanks for becoming a new member. I appreciate you. And I'm really sorry to hear about, you know, what's happened to you. That sounds horribly traumatic, and I'm glad you're okay. DC Primetime, thank you so much for the super chat. Thank you so much, sweetheart. Thank you for your support always. She says 40K. Wow, congratulations. Watch the Obsession. Thank you. And you've been here since like the beginning of it. Thank you so much. And Angel D, member for 2 months. Thank you so much. Hey, I appreciate every single one of you guys. Thank you so much. I know. I just can't even believe. I'm like 40,000 subscribers. That's awesome. Remember when I started this channel and I was like, I just want to learn how to do video editing. And this Watts case, I had been working on some aspects of it for a master's degree program I was finishing and wanted to talk about it. I know. Thank you, DC. It was a while. I just said to my son, I said, oh, you know, sometime I think in the last week or something when I was working or sleeping, because that's all I was doing, I hit 40,000. He was like, oh, cool. Hi, Karen G. I'm so glad you're here. Karen G says, as a journalism major, I want you to all know that you should not trust this stuff they keep putting out all the time because it's not about truth and it's about money. I think that's a really great point. What exactly are you talking about, my friend? And again, I'm so glad you're here. Trying to go back to what you were saying. Okay. The fact is, the media is a news hole, and the speculation will never end until it's closed, and even after might not end. Great point. Hopefully they prove things so it's not questioned so much like the Watts case. A freaking moon. Yeah. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, and Karen G makes another great point. Says, hey guys, Ted Bundy did a lot of damage breaking into sorority houses and people's homes and killed multiple people all by himself. I agree, and it is my opinion based on the evidence and where the evidence is pointing us, guys. You know, I'm willing to listen to your opinion. You're welcome here regardless of your opinion. But I am going to tell you that this channel is a fact-based channel. We work really hard to, you know, walk that fine line straight, a straight fine line. I think I just mixed analogies. We just want to keep the facts here. And when it's conjecture, when it's speculation, and that's fine, try to let you know that's what it is. This channel's mission as well is kind of twofold. It is to stand by justice for the victims and greater peace for the families, and also to study the dynamics of human behavior, because that is my jam, through this, you know, story of true crime that is told again and again in a number of different ways in our society, because people are fascinated by it, including myself and probably a lot of you here, for reasons that I've talked about before, the whys of why we are attracted to the genre. And you know, that's just what we do here. But we will always remain fact-based. That's why I ask, you know, if people are stating things as fact and they seem a little, you know, off the wall to myself or moderators, you know, we just ask that you please cite the source, and, you know, we can have a conversation about it. But if there is no source, then there is no source, and then it's just speculation, and that's okay. But we need to call it what it is. What? I'm not sure what that, Sophie's mom, I was just reading your comment, but I'm not sure. Again, I don't want to even, it's about victim family. I don't even want to pin that without knowing what that's about. But thank you for being here. Oh, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you for being part of the channel. You guys are all amazing, and you're it. You are it. See, Aries Park, would you like to, why do you think Bryan Kohberger can't possibly do it all by himself? I personally think he can. And all the people that I've talked to, you know, just in my personal life who are in law enforcement, I work with a lot of them. I know a lot of them. Some of them a family. I think across the board, they've said they believe it's possible. Whoops, hold up just a minute here. Sorry about that. My bad. Whoops, my fault. You know, and those law enforcement professionals having varying degrees of, you know, knowing varying degrees of information about the case. I think every single one of them has said that they do believe that is possible. It's possible that he committed, or one person has committed this crime on his own. And hey, Joan, thank you so much. Thanks for the super chat. Congratulations. You deserve all. And so do you. And thank you for being here from the beginning too, Joan. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. You guys are the bomb. Thank you. Cleaning up is going to. Tom Van says the more people involved increases the chance of a bloody footprint, and yet none. And cleaning up isn't going to fool the luminol or amino black. Great point, Tom. Absolutely. That's right. That's right. And, you know, Tina, I'm not sure what you're talking about here, but just makes a great point in general. Just speculation. We have no idea what will be unleashed in court, and we truly have no idea. Because as I've shared with you, I personally think, based on what I know now, and I could be wrong about this, I could change my mind, but I don't think I'm going to, just because of my beliefs on our freedoms and liberties. I think that the gag order is too strict, too broad. And for that reason, we truly have a lot of, we don't know what's going to be unleashed in court. Great point. Hey, Layla, thanks so much. She says, love your channel. Thank you very much. BK, I believe is innocent. I do not believe everything was a coincidence. Would you like to say more about that? I'd like to hear it. Thank you for being here, Layla. We're all part of these social experiments. You all know she's an actual genius. Well, gee, thank you. I think, Angel. Well, Sarah says one person would be covered in blood spatter and there would be a blood trail, in my opinion. And thank you for saying in my opinion. and I respect your opinion, Sarah, and I'm glad you're here. But that is your opinion. Funny, because someone I work with, without giving too much information about exactly where I work, I said to him, he's a retired law enforcement person, and I said, "Oh, when you have your the part of your course on blood splatter, which is coming up real soon, that he teaches with somebody else," I said, "Let me know. I want to come in for that because I want to learn more about how all of that is figured out." So I'm like really excited for that. If he'll let me bring any of it in to put on the channel, I would love to do that. But I was just thinking about how I'm going to ask him that today. I was thinking about that today. I'm not going to ask him today, but maybe I'll figure out a way. Interesting. Mike Applegate, who I trust, is usually, don't prove me wrong, says the mass media has outsourced their content creation to PR firms. They create content for free or cheap and push a particular narrative. The PR firm's payment is publishing their content, propaganda, or PR. I believe it's something like that, and thank you for that. Splatter cannot be predicted or controlled. Well, I'll let you know after I take the course with my friends who are teaching it, who are both highly qualified to teach it. Karen G says, Mike Applegate, thank you for adding to the discussion of the mainstream media's involvement. Thank you both. I appreciate both of you. Oh. Well, interesting, Sarah. If a crime has happened to you, do you call the police or do you call a friend? I know which I would do. I told a story, and I'm just going to brush over it, that when I was in law school, it was early in the morning. There was this perfect set of circumstances. I had broken my key in the door the night before. I was waiting for, I went to law school actually in Newark, New Jersey. I didn't live there, but it was you want to lock your door, and I was waiting for, like the apartment complex, the guy to come around to, fix the lock, provide me a new key and whatever. So it's very early in the morning, getting ready. And a downstairs neighbor breaks on my door and assaults me. All right. So charges were pressed. It was long and it was a horrible event. And I don't want to start to get into it too much now, because if I get into it a little bit, I just find that I have to tell more details or it feels incomplete somehow. I don't know. But what I want to share with you is that, what do I want to share with you? My gosh. Oh, I was crucified on the stand by the defense attorney because I called my boyfriend before I called the police. I was able to, because I had just watched this Oprah Winfrey I had taken some martial arts classes in the past. I don't know if it would have kicked in when I needed to, but I did know that I had just watched an Oprah Winfrey about self-defense, and I just remembered some things that the person said and that she said, and they were in my mind at the moment, and I was able to get the attacker off of me. I was able to free myself. I was able to get outside and all kinds of disheveled, without going into detail, and I had a phone, and I called my boyfriend. I may have called my mom after that before calling law enforcement. I think my mom would know. I don't remember, to be honest, but I was harshly attacked for that. But I know what I did, and I did it honestly. I was scared, and I called. I didn't want to see a cop. I wanted to see my boyfriend. I wanted to see my mom, So interesting question always, Sarah. Okay, guys. Well, I am going to get wrapping up, but I am definitely going to be doing another, let's see, what's it, Tuesday? I'm going to definitely do a live stream on Friday, and I want to do one on Thursday or Saturday because I still owe you that Watts and sharing. I was going to do around Halloween, sharing my story of the what I believe was paranormal experience and some other things, and I have a couple guests that are going to come on for that. I just haven't been able to do it yet because of my work schedule and some family responsibilities. Definitely want to do that this week. I have some time coming up. I have Friday off. And then I'm also going to do a live stream either Thursday night or Saturday. Don't know which one for sure. Definitely for 100% sure. So you have 2 more live streams from the channel to look forward to this week. Hope you do look forward to them. I'm so happy you guys were here. Thank you, moderators. You're amazing. Thank you so much, members. Thank you, subscribers. And if you're just checking us out, maybe you want to click subscribe, come back, hang out with us again. I'm sure we'd like to have you come back. And yeah, I just appreciate you all so very much. Please be safe, lock your doors, and be good to yourself because life is hard and I know that you deserve it because you deserve it for sure. Please do hit like on the way out. I greatly appreciate it.
There are more answers than you know.
Each had multiple stab wounds. Some had defensive wounds, showing they fought with the attacker. And there was no sexual assault. County Coroner Kathy Mabbutt is describing the murders as personal.